topic of discussion today, we are looking at the Somalia question. How can we bring lasting peace in that particular area? I'm speaking to two gentlemen who are experts in issues of the region and security. Dr. Arthur Bainomgisha, Executive Director, Ally Advocates Coalition on Development and Environment, is a regional expert and lecturer, peace and security studies at the Uganda Christian University. Mr. Edgar Tabaro, advocate, analyst of issues within the Great Lakes region, same time envoy of Sudan's oldest political party, UMA, that is Sudan of Khartoum. Share with us your views. Use our WhatsApp line, which is 0703-090-090. Edgar, I'll come to you. This attack comes at a time when there is a deep conversation in advanced stages. I remember last month there was a meeting here of all foreign ministers from the troop contributing countries discussing how they can start withdrawing troops in June. Like Dr. Arthur said, 32 years is a long time. There has been all manner of training provided to the Somali National Army, including training from our place here in Kaweweta. We have trained them in Somalia, equipped them with guns and ammunition, etc., etc. Does this kind of development, I know it's not a first attack, there was an attack against the Kenyans where so many soldiers died. There was an attack against the Burundians, their contingents in the different areas.
By the time there was an attack, the headquarters, right headquarters in Mogadishu.
Exactly.
And the deputy chief of the deputy, not contingent commander,
deputy chief.
Yeah, of I think it was Major General Nathan. Was it Mujisha? Nathan Mujisha, who was the AMSOM commander, and his deputy was a Burundian, a brigadier general. I can't remember. He died in that attack.
Oh,
they hit right at the went and hit the mess.
So, what can we do? Because some people say this is an African problem.
It's not an African problem, and I think.
So what exactly can we do?
Whoever is calling it an African problem is really, for lack of a better word,
so what exactly is the problem in Somalia?
Is ignorant. I remember in 1992 when the government was falling, soon after the fall of Said Barre in 1991, and the defeat of George Bush and the ascendancy of Clinton. And you know, there was a shift in policy that they should actually, do you remember one of the last acts President George Bush performed? Bush Senior was visiting their bases in Somalia, and basically announcing that they were pulling out. But I was in Senior 3, and around the same time the Soviet Union collapsed. I recall my old man, who is now retired, bringing me a Time magazine of that time, and it was a review of the book of Francis Fukuyama, The End of History. Francis Fukuyama predicted, and rightly so, that the next international conflict will be based so much on culture of civilization, and particularly pointed out extreme Islamism. I was young and still in my budding stages of formulating my cosmology outlook towards life. And I attempted to ask questions whose answers I'm still trying to find. Because the more I attempt to find questions, the more complex it gets. Because one will agree that African states are weak. And I do remember an interview President Museveni giving to the African Report. Is it the African Report, where he said, I'll circulate it one time. I think I'll put it on Twitter, on my Twitter handle and Facebook. Well, and I think rightly so, President Museveni says, in comparison to Europe, that in Europe they have nations. In Africa we're still trying to establish nations. So, and unfortunately for us in Africa, our nations, are what we call nations, or the geographical extents, geographical definitions of countries. Our communities, our people are still, we are primordial. Primordial is a euphemism for primitive. Backwardness. We are pre-industrial, we are pre-scientific, we are peasantry. As such, even the conflicts that we tend to escalate are based along such grounding, such lines. And then there's the international community, which has an entirely different agenda. Not really international community, not in the manner in which Dr. Arthur understands it, but let me say there are international powers, or there are players on the international scene that have interests that are detrimental to we the Africans. What do they want? They want to access our resources. They want to access our mineral resources, and they want to keep us as markets for their products. Now, these conflicts that you see play so much into their favor. And if you look at the plane of conflict, right from the 14th parallel, 14th parallel is that area, are they called latitudes? Latitude. Above the 14 degrees above the equator. Every territory in that area is not under stable government. Chad, Mali, Sahrawi, Burkina Faso, Mali, Libya, Sudan, a bit of Ethiopia, they are all in turmoil. And the turmoil is based on ethnicity, and in some cases, religion. And there's what they call the Islamic, or rather Al-Qaeda in the Islamic Maghreb. It has its links with ADF, it has its links with the Sereka rebels in Central African Republic, it has its links with the rapid support forces of General Dagalo in Sudan. They have a link with Al-Shabaab. They also have a link with what is happening. Is it in Sofala, the province north of Mozambique?
Islamic courts.
Islamic courts. Well, Islamic courts and ISIS, Al-Qaeda and the Maghreb, Al-Shabaab, all connected. ADF, all coordinated. And they have very, very heavy funding. So, the people who are saying that Uganda should think of pulling out really do not understand the complexity of the matters at hand. It is very critical that even Uganda reinforces, believe me, because a total breakdown beyond what we have in Somalia poses great dangers for us in Uganda.
Well, would it be a total breakdown? There was a time when the Islamic courts took charge of Somalia
and they stabilized
Somalia, and some people still even argue up to now that all that was needed was some sort of diplomatic engagement with the Islamic courts to drop some of their radical position, like Islam ruling by Sharia law, etc., and executions and the things they were doing. But instead, the international community chose war.
You see, that's not a
Is it not possible, therefore, that this could be a Somalia question that we should probably leave to them to deal with?
That's not a proper reading of the situation in Somalia. You know, my parents happen to be from a very beautiful area of Uganda, born in a beautiful area of Uganda called Chisoro. We speak a language that is very close to what is spoken.
You are from Gisoro.
My parents are from Gisoro. Me, I have a different domicile. I'm from Toro. I chose to move to Toro. But you know, these ethnicities that astride the borders, that are transboundary, any conflict in that country spills over to the other countries. So there was a spillover of that conflict in Ethiopia and threatened there was an existential threat against the Ethiopian what? The Ethiopian state. There was as well an existential threat against the Kenyan state. So to look at it as purely Somali is a misreading of the situation. But I want to just a quick one, just a quick clip. That stabilization of a country. Uganda did very much in trying to stabilize, in stabilizing Burundi. But the nitty-gritty, the dirty, the rolling up of the sleeves and the hems, what was done by the locals. And when it's being done by the locals, they have their own intricacies. Sometimes very disturbing, sometimes threatening. You remember, Arthur, we did interact very closely when there were skirmishes in 2015, an attempted coup in Burundi. You remember what happened. But by the grace of God and the involvement of the people, it's now in the past. They had an election. They had an election where the incumbent was not on the ballot box, and the country was stabilized. So whoever is arguing that way has a misreading of the situation.
All right. They say before you can provide a solution to a problem, you must know identify the problem and analyze it to the point where you actually say this is the best way to do it. In your last take, Dr. Arthur Bainobgisha, you passionately spoke about how it's becoming too long for peace to return to Somalia. In your analysis...
Peace to return to Somalia?
Yes.
They have not had peace in your lifetime, so when are you talking of returning?
Well, I'm quite sure there was a time when there was relative peace in Somalia. So, what could be the problem and how can we deal with it?
Yes, so in conflict resolution, we have what we call conflict analysis. And conflict analysis is very, very important in the conflict resolution to prescribe then interventions for conflict resolution and peace building. I think let's look at the root causes. One, of course, is rooted in the colonial past of this country. You know, this country was actually colonized by the Italians.
And the British.
And the British. It has changed hands. But the colonial past has haunted this country. And the colonial past actually put this country, divided this country among 5 countries. So you find Somalis in Ethiopia, they are in Djibouti, they are in Kenya, they are in Sudan, they are in... So they are divided among... And I think it was also intended that they divide these people among 5 nations and contain them. So there was a containment. But there has been a clamor to create a Somali nation. That nation... That clamor for nation is at the heart of this.
Is it an artificial
That is why
nation?
they are fighting in Ethiopia to break away. They are fighting in South Sudan. They want actually to create that nation. That is one. The second point, the root, because that's the colonial legacy that actually continues to disturb this nation. The second one is minerals. The natural resource abundance in that country. I think that is not spoken. But that country has abundant resources.
It has oil, my friend.
It has a lot of oil, and its oil is on the surface. It has oil and gas. It has all the rare earth. It has all these strategic minerals that the starved part of the world would want to access. And sometimes I think it's important to keep people divided and weak. And I don't actually want to agree with my brother on the primordial. I don't consider ourselves as backward and primitive at all. This is a design. Actually, these are nations. These are nations fighting actually for self-liberation. And actually, I want to agree with your analysis that actually, why don't you allow the Somalis even to sort it out themselves? Why don't you allow the strong to emerge, the winner, and then you engage it in international law?
So we give war a chance.
We lost an opportunity with the Islamic courts.
Because, yes, you can give war a chance and engage. But you see, there is the economic agendas. The economic agendas of this civil war. There are people who benefit. And people who benefit from the continuation of this war at different
conflict.
The locals, the nations, you need within these regional powers, the international powers, the fundamentalists, the business community, they are cheaply now exploiting the resources of this country as it remains disorganized. So that is also another cause. Of course, the third cause, Edgar has talked about it, the Islamization. The whole of mid-Africa, he has explained it very well, right from Djibouti up to...
Middle East. The Middle East.
Yeah,
That's what they call the
Islamists
Middle
have
East.
brought it out to take over that part of Africa, the middle part,
The Horn of Africa,
to become the Islamic State. That's their design. But of course, there have also been allegations that are unsubstantiated that this could be even a bigger project of some other powers who support it, because you talk about massive support to the ISIS and Al Qaeda. Who is actually financing this?
Exactly.
It is important because people have talked of deliberate depopulation of that part of Africa, and then you will see when it has completely been depopulated and people displaced into Uganda with a very good refugee policy and other areas, and then stabilization.
Please repeat that. I beg you kindly. He's making a very fundamental.
It is
submission.
Not substantiated.
No.
Serious agendas of people who want large-scale farming as the world, because you see, it is only Africa now that has 40% of the arable land in the world.
In the globe.
On the globe is
Is
in
it-
Africa.
Yes, yes.
Is in Africa. And so why don't you now deliberately fund and depopulate this place and take it over? You know, some of the largest around owners who are buying massively. There's that allegation.
would think
it
that
needs to be
I
substantiated.
would think that
I
Dr.
don't have
Arthur
that
is
evidence.
engaging in propaganda.
No, it's not.
It's an allegation.
He's an intellectual.
It's an
No, but it's
allegation.
not but
It
look,
can be investigated further, but it is part of the agenda of the hungry.
just a
that
quick one.
wants
Just a quick one. The hungry indeed. Just a quick one.
On the
Are
mic.
you aware?
On the mic.
Are you aware? There are about 40 million people at the verge of starvation in the Horn of Africa. Are you aware that they've not had rains for 4 years? And coupled with that, we have had a locust invasion that has eaten up the grain. The grain has eaten up the cereals, and there's no declaration of humanitarian assistance. That is the first line of defense by the international community: declare humanitarian assistance,
So
and
that
all resources
aid
can flow in. It's not happening.
All right.
No, you know, but Mr. Lukwago, we had a better wake up. This is our last card as Africans, believe me. They are going to massively dislocate us, have a lot of forced migration, and forced migration comes with, but the more conflict, the more people move. We are very lucky here that in Uganda, Mr. Lukwago, you are very lucky here in Uganda.
People are currently leaving Africa.
We are lucky
Europe
that the
willingly.
security forces in Uganda don't go to sleep. We have a major problem as a result of urban refugees from the Horn of Africa. Take it from me. These bomb attacks we had in 2010, they had that element. There are many other things I wouldn't say on air, but on a daily basis.
But also, you look at the international, you ask where are these arms coming from that fight and sustain conflict in Africa.
You
Who are
Africans
the
are
greatest
bringing- you
exporters
Africans are
of
the
the
ones
arm-
going
of the
to
arms?
ask for those
Look
arms.
at the arms transfer.
Instead of asking for funds to develop your countries, you're asking for arms. When you go to buy from Russia, the best items actually,
Even I have
the Sukhoi,
Uganda and Russia can trade in is arms.
And let me say this now.
And ammunition.
I have also no confidence. I have no confidence in the Russians. I have no, especially with the Wagner group, pursuing the interests of Russia. I have no interest.
It is
in
wreaking
the
havoc in
Chinese.
Central
The
African
Chinese
Republic,
also,
in Sudan.
They are all new colonialists on the block. I think Africa must wake up. Africa for Africa, we must defend ourselves. And I want to support my brother here that we need actually to prevent. We need to support Somalia. We may not really put our soldiers on the front line. They need to deal. But we need to support them and prevent that from happening. The war from being fought in this country. So it's a wake-up call for African Union. And I am glad I saw the president chairing. I think he chaired the meeting yesterday. Of the heads of state, heads of state to discuss actually Sudan, of course, and Somalia. As you see, actually Africa again is up in flames, and it's on our doorsteps. You have Sudan, you have South Sudan, you have Somalia, you have Ethiopia emerging, you have actually Kenya, the northern part of it is a failed state. You have DR Congo. What is remaining? Actually, it fits the description of a hopeless continent, but it's not hopeless. So I think what Africa
You're
needs...
going back to the Economist magazine, where Africa, they're a hopeless continent.
I mean, everything looks to be...
But we, the elite, are responsible for this. We are hopeless.
It's about governance.
Okay, let me not use the word
Well,
hopeless.
somebody listening
we
in-
are without hope.
Somebody listening in, Richard, actually writes in and says, what Edgar is preaching is escapist theory. On our own, we are worse than the imperialists. That's his view there.
I'm agreeing with him.
So-
we are responsible. We the elite.
What do we...
We are the elite.
How come with that kind of
I
situation?
don't want just to reduce it to leadership. The elite. The intelligentsia were so withdrawn. We do not set the agenda. We are just followers of agendas, whose agendas we even don't know. We have failed to define ourselves. For instance, if I asked, what is our generational cause?
No, I think I want to agree with you.
We failed even to define it.
I think also what has happened in Africa is actually the failure for our intelligentsia, the political elites, to tap into the political leadership to tap into the elites. Because you see, governments must be knowledge-driven, knowledge-based.
What is failing Africa?
Who's doing
what is failing Africa is the greed of its leadership.
And militarism that is...
Let me put it this way. There was a lady called Madeleine Albright. She was Secretary of State under Clinton.
Later...
Secretary of State under Clinton. And next, was she from Czechoslovakia? She was a
Czechoslovakia.
An immigrant.
She was also ambassador at the UN.
Yes, but then Secretary of State. She coined the term new breed of African leaders.
Which included President Yoweri Museveni.
I don't know why you are measuring names.
He was included in that new breed of leaders. I remember very well.
Now you've bastardized what I was going to say next.
No. Maybe I should also name the other leaders.
Kagame, Kabila, Zenawi, Afawaki,
so that I do not bastardize.
Okay, thank you very much. Because you wanted to box me into a corner. So each of those leaders soon turned against another. They turned their guns on another. So the new breed.
But who is behind that?
I'm coming to that.
Someone actually makes them turn their guns against each other.
And so the new breed of African leaders morphed into a new greed of African leaders.
So you agree with me? Greed is a big problem in Africa.
And why aren't we taming it? We, the elite, have joined at the high table and are partaking either on the what are you called the juicy pieces, or waiting for the crumbs.
The crumbs.
And hoping that divine intervention will deliver us to the promised land. Moses had to take it upon himself and lead the Israelis to the what? To the promised land. We are not going to remain rudderless.
There is this joke.
We are not going to remain rudderless, and we hope.
There is this joke about how many years it actually took to reach the promised land.
No, not every leader can lead you to the promised land. You play your part. You play your part and hand over the baton to the next. You hand over let me tell you, nobody is going to stabilize Africa for you. We are going to have to do it ourselves. These things are not going to fall from the sky. We have to fold our sleeves, fold the hems, pull up the hems, get dirty, and work towards what you want for ourselves.
All right, gentlemen, I know very well that there are so many people out there, especially the leaders, who actually understand some of the things you're talking about. They know probably the imperialists is after Africa, like you said. They know Africa has all these vast natural resources to stand on its own. President Yoweri Museveni is among those that has been speaking about the need for Africa to have strategic defense. Can the African countries organize, go to Somalia, all-out war, and flush out the Al-Shabaab?
Let me tell you something I wanted to finish about the analysis.
As we come to the end of
yes, one of the analysis is actually that some of the countries in the region do not want Somalia stabilized. And actually an example is Ethiopia. Ethiopia, it is its project. And from every leader to another leader, they carry it forward to make sure that Somalia remains disorganized and fighting. So until the foreign policy of Ethiopia towards Somalia changes, as long as they are still a regional power there and they have that kind of mindset, they will even continue to instigate that confusion. So we want to speak to Ethiopia directly and stop that one.
And Egypt is fueling.
Yes,
is fueling
in Ethiopia so that Ethiopia doesn't stabilize and become.
Now tell me that we Africans are serious. Tell me. I mean, that's the question I'm asking. I mean, these are you're previously a communications expert, so I'm doing what they call shock therapy, and also self-introspection. We're doing introspection. We are not doing the right thing by our people. We are without hope, and we are thinking that the Africa that we desire, the Africa will fall from the sky like manna. Things don't happen that way. At least in my lifetime, I've not seen things happen that way. Human phenomena, human whatever. Never. We gotta work on it.
Yeah, but as you said, leadership is very important. There cannot be so many Moseses. There will be Moses, there will be Joshua, there will be what. So I think the current leadership of Africa must, as a matter of affirmative action, identify, nurture, and direct leadership talent to take over the next mantle. But Africa, as he said, must fend for ourselves. No one actually wishes good. And actually, there are even policies, you can find them in some of the countries as far back as 1950 to keep Africa divided, keep Africa disorganized, and root for
What
it.
Dr. Biamnamijisha is talking about is not stuff in the books. It has happened. Nyerere identified the leadership and the country is stable. Let Nkurunziza, Pierre. You remember he was one of the people who were skeptical at that time. But I won him over after a few discussions, He met at me, so with the knowledge he gave me, and you've seen, he identified the leadership and the country has stabilized.
I will end this show with a comment from Jeff, who says, for as long as we don't know where we are from and where we are, we will never know
where we are going.
And he hashtags it, death of culture, and says, cheers. Thank you very much, Jeff, and many others for actually contributing to this discussion. Gentlemen, unfortunately, this discussion has to come to an end, but there is always another opportunity. Probably next time, we should be tackling the challenges within the African Union.
When you talk of another,
recently,
another country that will go up in flames and we come and discuss. Recently, we're discussing Sudan.
Until we are dealing with Somalia.
Unfortunately, we're laughing about it, but that's a coping mechanism.
All right. Spectrum comes to an end. Thank you very much for listening to us. Up next is the news in English with Josephine Dagano. Thereafter, the Soul Train with BB Jr.